John and Mary Taylor, who in 1843 had been foundation members of Collins Street Baptist Church in Melbourne, moved to the Bendigo Goldfields. They conducted their first service in 1853 inside a tent here in what is now known as the White Hills Cemetery. A slab hut was built later that year. However, after only 10 months in this location, another move ensued as their premises was acquired for mining. Moving the hut to the bank of the Bendigo Creek near Kings Bridge followed until a new small weatherboard church was built in Raglan Street, and in 1864 a more substantial brick building was erected. In these days before modern transport, it was not unusual to walk extraordinary distances to church. Bootmaker and preacher Welshman Edward Jones walked up to 32 kilometres on a Sunday to conduct services, often preaching at Bendigo, Derwent Gully and White Hills in one day. In 1857, Reverend Ebenezer Henderson began his ministry service in Sandhurst.
And 2 years later, on February 13, 1859, the Sandhurst, soon to be renamed Bendigo Baptist Church, was formally established and their church building officially opened. The building was first erected here between White Hills and Epsom.
But the building was shortly moved and re-erected here in Hargrave Street. However, in 1863, the church's financial difficulties meant that the building had to be sold.
The congregation moved its services to the local temperance hall.
Funds were raised to open a new church right here in Hargrave Street in 1864, accommodating 300 worshippers. And despite ongoing financial strain, the church was known for its Christian love, inclusivity and charity, being well regarded for its donations toward the Sandhurst Hospital. These ongoing financial pressures though accumulated until in 1871 the church needed a miracle to rectify their circumstance. By God's grace, though, they got one in the form of the Ladies' Sewing Circle, who provided the necessary funds to keep the church afloat. Despite the challenges, the church grew under the guidance of various leaders who helped make the Lord's Supper accessible to all believers, established Bible classes, and expanded the church's building. Similar changes to worship practices were also made as new hymn books were adopted and unfermented wine used for communion.
By 1885, the Reverend Dr. Thomas Porter was using the Royal Princess Theatre to conduct services due to the large and growing congregation. Supplementing the church's main ministry during this time were open-air meetings, religious instruction in state schools, significant expansion of the Sunday school and women's Christian service. However, several leadership and pastoral issues meant the church still contended with difficulties such as contentious elections, conflict with the choir, and illness. Yet despite this, the church managed to pay off its debts, rectify past mistakes, and expand its pastoral oversight.
In 1914, the Baptist churches decided to establish a district church comprising of Bendigo, Eaglehawk, Quarry Hill, which had just commenced, and White Hills. But with the start of World War I, it lasted just a few years.
1915 saw Reverend E. Herbert Hobday enter the ministry, but sadly, many young men exited to fight in the Great War. Distressingly, during Hobday's 18th month term, his choir master collapsed and died while singing. Despite an unsuccessful proposal for a merger with the Church of Christ and the global influenza epidemic, the church persevered. Then, under the noticeable ministers Reverend Leonard E. Tranter and Reverend Sidney Dorman, the post-war church was reinvigorated through youth activities and sports. Reverend Eric H. Holloway then led the church through the economic depression between 1928 to 1934 with a sustained focus on charity. 1934 also saw the church celebrate 75 years of ministry, thankful to now be a debt-free institution with a congregation of 144, a Sunday school of 23 teachers and 110 students, and 60 members as part of Christian endeavour. As the church grew, so did advances in technology, thus allowing the church to introduce gas heating, produce radio broadcasts, as well as sound films.
The church's centenary was celebrated in 1959 and the Edward Street Church opened in 1963. Dynamic ministers like the Reverend Stanley Brigay and the Reverend Alec Fairbank pioneered new forms of worship such as folk services, drama and dance. The Reverend Alan Neat arrived in 1980. The church then broadened its community outreach and services, beginning initiatives such as a daily devotional call service and youth brigades. In 1984, the first playgroup began with 5 adults and 9 children. As the church ministries increased, Van Shaw was then called as a second pastor.
My husband, Reverend Norman State, and I moved to Bendigo in 1986 to retire, but almost immediately we joined the BBC ministry. In 1987, Brian McClellan became the senior pastor. After the resignation of 2 pastors at the end of 1994, Norman State became the interim senior pastor. Reverend Tom Finlayson Smith led a period of healing and reconciliation, with Ron Giles accepting the role of interim pastor when Tom moved to Launceston.
In 1999, Greg Ardle was called as next senior pastor, heralding a new era. And later that year, Dave Lovell and his family would move from the USA to join the BBC ministry team. Pastor Greg's leadership enabled the church to purchase some land in Junerton in 2001, signalling the beginning of a new era for the church. A church building costing $1.2 million was commenced and financed by the sale of property in Bysha Street, the White Hills Baptist Church, and the generous donations of the church family. The new building finally opened in 2002, and with a renewed commitment to church growth and service, it was a joy to see many new people call BBC their spiritual home. 2006 saw Dave Lovell called into the role of senior pastor, and with the establishment of a new multi-staff team made up of many gifted men and women, the church experienced another season of growth.
In September 2009, the church established Bendigo Baptist Community Care to be the hands and feet of Jesus to those that are most vulnerable and marginalised in our community. God's blessing on this ministry has been evident to all as our dynamic ministry team has overseen and supported a work that has grown exponentially in this city. In the face of the retirement of Reverend Eckhart Friesian and potential closure, Parsonage Grove Baptist Church sought our assistance, leading to a merger in 2014. This move helped revitalise the church's ministry, bringing about significant local community engagement. Today, this ministry campus has a vibrant presence, ministering to all generations within that part of Bendigo. With initial grants and donations totaling $1.8 million, our rental space in Hargreaves Street site was purchased in 2022. The op shop was relocated from this place to its new facility in California Gully in 2023 that was also purchased through loans and significant donations. We praise God for His provision of funds totaling $3.4 million that enable us to minister in effective ways in our community.
Today, the Bendigo Baptist Church
Thrives as a vibrant and welcoming gospel community.
With over 1,000 people of various ages and ethnicities
Spread across multiple congregations,
It's our commitment to our vision and mission
that holds us together.
our passion for reaching people for Jesus now sees us commission Mike Piotagitama to plant our first church plant in Hargreaves Street, right in the heart of Bendigo. This congregation will have an emphasis on reaching out to the homeless and all those living in close proximity to the CBD.
BBC has seen lots of change in our 170 years.
As we look back and give thanks to God for all He has done,
Our vision of reaching our city,
state, nation and globe
with the gospel of Jesus
Remains the same.
Our hope is to see lives and communities transformed by grace.
And see many become faithful followers of Jesus Christ.
and like those that have gone before us,
May the coming years see the mission of God
in the hands of ordinary people
Doing whatever it takes.